My hands gripped the cold windowsill so hard I thought the wood might crack. Rain hammered the roof of the cabin like it was trying to drown out the truth, but nothing could hide what I was seeing right there in front of me. Emily, my daughter-in-law, the woman who called me mom for the last 6 years, was wrapped around another man on the couch I bought with my own money. His hands were all over her. She was laughing softly, the way she used to laugh with my son David on their honeymoon. But this wasn't David. This was some stranger with a fancy watch and a smile that screamed trouble. My stomach twisted like someone had kicked it. My throat closed up so tight I couldn't even breathe right. I just stood there in the dark, soaked to the bone, watching the woman my son worshipped destroy everything we built. This was my property, the cabin my late husband and I saved for 20 years to buy, the place where David took his first steps, the place I let them use whenever they needed a weekend away from the city. And here she was, using it like her own little secret playground. If you've ever felt that knife twist in your gut from someone you trusted with your whole heart, hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video if you believe betrayal like this deserves to be answered. And comment below, have you ever caught family stabbing you in the back? I read every single one because stories like this only get told when we refuse to stay quiet. This is my story. I'm Linda Harper, 58 years old, mother of one amazing son, and the woman who refused to swallow her pain and pretend everything was fine. That afternoon changed me forever. Let me back up just a little so you understand how we got here. David had been working crazy hours at the hospital, 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer. He's a surgeon, the kind of man who puts everyone else first. Emily always said she understood. She'd smile that sweet smile and tell me, "Mom, don't worry, I'm fine." But something had felt off for months. The new designer bags she couldn't possibly afford on her part-time job, the late nights she blamed on book club, the way she'd flinch every time I asked about their plans for the cabin. I told myself I was just being a suspicious mother-in-law. I told myself to mind my own business. Until that storm hit last week and the roof started leaking. David was stuck at the hospital, so I grabbed my keys and drove the 2 hours myself. I didn't even call ahead. Why would I? It was my name on the deed. I just wanted to check the damage, maybe throw some tarps down before it got worse. Simple, innocent. I pulled up the gravel drive just after sunset. The lights were on. My heart did this little skip. Maybe David had surprised her after all. I smiled for half a second. Then I heard the laughter through the open window. Not David's deep laugh, a lighter one, a stranger's laugh. I should have knocked. I should have walked away. But something in my chest pulled me forward. I crept up to that big front window like a thief in my own home. And that's when the world cracked open. Emily's blouse was half unbuttoned. The man's jacket was on the floor next to my late husband's old reading chair. She whispered something in his ear, and he pulled her closer, kissing her neck the way David used to when they first got married. My knees went weak. I actually had to grab the wall to stay standing. Hot tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Anger rose up so fast and so sharp, it felt like fire in my veins. This woman had sat at my Thanksgiving table. She had cried in my arms when she lost her first pregnancy. She had promised my son forever. And now she was throwing it all away in the one place that was supposed to be safe for our family. I backed away slowly, one step at a time, my shoes sinking into the mud. The rain mixed with the tears finally sliding down my cheeks. I didn't scream. I didn't bang on the door. I just got in my car, turned the key, and drove away with the image burned into my brain like a brand. The whole ride home, my mind was racing. How long had this been going on? Did David suspect anything? What about the baby photos on the fridge at their apartment? Did those mean nothing to her? I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Every red light felt like it lasted an hour. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my whole body was shaking. I sat in the dark car for a long time, just staring at the house David grew up in, the house where I taught him how to tie his shoes, the house where he brought Emily home for the first time and asked me, eyes shining, "Mom, isn't she perfect?" Perfect. Yeah. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the kitchen until the sun came up, replaying every moment. The way Emily hugged me a little too tight last Christmas, the way she always changed the subject when I asked about work, the new perfume that smelled expensive and nothing like the sweet vanilla she used to wear. Little things I had brushed off because I loved my son too much to rock the boat. But the boat was already sinking, and I was the only one who could see it. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to burst in and cause a scene. I wasn't going to cry in front of her and give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. No, I was going to watch. I was going to learn every single detail, and when the time was right, I was going to speak. Because this was my family, my property, my son's heart on the line, and I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I poured myself a cup of coffee with hands that still trembled, looked out at the rising sun, and whispered to the empty kitchen, "You picked the wrong woman to betray Emily." Little did she know, the storm outside was nothing compared to the one I was about to bring inside. The next morning, I didn't call David, I didn't text Emily, I didn't do anything that would tip my hand. Instead, I opened my laptop, logged into the cabin's security camera account, the one my husband installed years ago after a string of break-ins in the area, and I started watching. The footage from the night before was still there, crystal clear. Every laugh, every touch, every second of betrayal captured in 1080p. I didn't fast forward. I forced myself to sit through it again, frame by frame, letting the pain sink in deeper so it would never fade when I needed the anger most. My coffee went cold beside me, my eyes burned from not blinking, but I needed to see it all. I needed proof that wasn't just in my head. They left around 11 p.m. Emily kissed him goodbye at the door like it was the most natural thing in the world. He drove off in a black Audi, new plates, shiny rims. She locked up, turned off the lights, and left 10 minutes later in her white SUV. My SUV. The one David bought her for their 3rd anniversary because she said the old one made her feel small. I watched her taillights disappear down the gravel road and felt something shift inside me. Not just hurt anymore. Resolve. Cold, hard, unshakable resolve. I spent the rest of that day digging, quietly, methodically. First, I checked the cabin's utility logs. Someone had been running the heat and the hot water almost every weekend for the past 4 months, even when David was on call and couldn't leave the hospital. 4 months. That number sat in my stomach like lead. Next, I pulled up Emily's Instagram from a private browser. She never posted anything obvious, no couple selfies with mystery men, but the stories were different. Little hints if you knew where to look. A glass of expensive red wine on the cabin porch with the caption, "Peace and quiet." A new bracelet glinting in sunlight tagged with a jewelry store 2 towns over. A blurry shot of a man's hand holding hers under a table at some dimly lit restaurant. His sleeve rolled up just enough to show that same fancy watch I'd seen through the window. I screenshotted everything, time-stamped, organized into a folder labeled simply evidence. I wasn't emotional about it anymore. I was clinical, like I was preparing taxes or planning a surgery with David, step by step, no mistakes. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Reed, ex-cop, mid-50s, voice like gravel. I met him at a quiet diner halfway between my house and the city. No small talk. I slid an envelope across the table, half the fee up front, plus copies of the security stills and the license plate number I'd zoomed in on. I need names, dates, places. I need to know exactly who he is and how long this has been going on, and I need it fast. He didn't ask questions, just nodded once. 3 days, maybe 4. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Not because the pain was gone, God no, but because I wasn't helpless anymore. I had direction. I had control. David came over for dinner 2 nights later. Just him. Emily had a migraine, he said. He looked tired. Deep shadows under his eyes, shoulders hunched like he was carrying something heavy he couldn't name. We ate pot roast, the same recipe his grandmother taught me. He talked about a tricky surgery he'd just finished. I listened, nodded, smiled in all the right places, but inside I was screaming. How could he not see it? How could he still love her so completely when she was shredding him behind his back? After dessert, he hugged me longer than usual. Thanks, Mom. I needed this. I held him tight and whispered into his hair, I've always got you, baby. Always. He left. I stood at the door watching his car disappear, and the tears finally came. Not for Emily, not even for me, for him. For the boy who still believed in forever because his mother had taught him it was possible. That night, I couldn't sleep again, so I sat at the kitchen table with my evidence folder open and started building the plan. Option 1, confront Emily privately, show her the footage, demand she confess to David herself. But I knew her type. She'd cry, play victim, twist everything until David felt guilty for even asking questions. She'd gaslight him into doubting his own eyes. I'd seen it before with other women in our circle. No, confrontation too early would only give her time to rewrite the story. Option 2, tell David everything right now. But he was already exhausted, overworked. If I dropped this bomb without ironclad proof and a clear path forward, he might shut down. Or worse, he might forgive her. I'd watched too many good men forgive the unforgivable because they couldn't bear the alternative. Option 3, wait, gather more, let Marcus finish his work, then present David with a complete picture, one so undeniable that even love couldn't blind him anymore. And when the moment came, I wouldn't just expose her, I would make sure she understood exactly what she'd thrown away. I chose option 3. 3 days later, Marcus called. Got a name, he said. Ethan Caldwell, 34, corporate lawyer, works at Kessler and Pratt downtown. Married, 2 kids under 5. Wife thinks he's at late client meetings every other weekend. My blood went cold. Married, kids. Emily wasn't just cheating on my son, she was helping destroy another family too. There's more, Marcus continued. They've been meeting at the cabin since January. Hotel receipts before that, credit card charges on her personal card, dinners, lingerie, weekend getaways. She's been siphoning money from their joint account too. Small amounts, nothing David would notice right away. I closed my eyes. How much? Roughly $11,000 over 6 months, mostly cash withdrawals labeled as miscellaneous. $11,000 from the account David worked 60-hour weeks to build, for their future, for the house they were saving for the baby they kept saying they'd try for again someday. I thanked Marcus, paid the rest of his fee. Then I sat in silence for a long time. The anger wasn't hot anymore. It was ice, sharp, precise, dangerous. I opened my laptop again. This time I wasn't looking at Emily. I was looking at the cabin's deed. My name only. Always had been. David never wanted his name on it, said it was Mom and Dad's place forever. Sweet boy. I pulled up the security system settings, changed the password, enabled motion alerts straight to my phone. Then I made one more change. I activated the outdoor floodlights, the bright ones, the ones that turn night into day and blind anyone who isn't expecting them. Next time they came, they wouldn't be hidden in soft lamplight. They'd be lit up like a stage, and I would be watching, from the shadows, ready. I didn't wait for the weekend. I couldn't. Every hour that passed felt like another hour my son was living a lie, and I refused to let that happen 1 second longer than necessary. Marcus sent me the full report on Wednesday afternoon, 20 pages of cold, hard facts. Bank statements, hotel receipts, even a copy of the text messages he'd culled from a burner app Emily thought no one could trace. "Can't wait to feel your hands on me again," she'd written to Ethan. "David's on night shift. Cabin this Friday?" Friday. Tomorrow. I read that message 3 times, then printed it out and laid it on the kitchen table next to the photo of David and Emily on their wedding day. The contrast made my chest ache, but it also made something inside me click into place. No more watching, no more waiting. It was time to move. That same afternoon, I drove back to the cabin, alone. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy, like the sky knew what was coming. I parked out of sight behind the old shed and let myself in with my key. The place smelled like her perfume, expensive, cloying, wrong. I didn't touch anything at first. I just stood in the middle of the living room where I'd seen them together and let the memory wash over me one last time. Then I got to work. First, the cameras. I added 2 new ones, small, wireless, 4K. One in the corner above the fireplace with a perfect view of the couch, one in the hallway facing the front door. I tested the live feed on my phone. Crystal clear, motion activated, sound on. Everything would be recorded and backed up to a cloud only I could access. Next, the locks. I had a locksmith meet me there, paid him double to come on short notice and keep his mouth shut. New deadbolts on every door, new code for the keypad. I kept the old key for myself. Emily still had hers, but it wouldn't work anymore. She wouldn't know that until she tried it. I left the lights exactly as they were, the wine glasses she'd left in the sink, the blanket thrown over the arm of the couch. I wanted everything to look normal when she arrived. Normal until it wasn't. Before I left, I did one more thing. I opened the safe in the back closet, the one my husband and I used for important papers, and I took out the original deed to the property. Then I wrote a short, simple note on the back of the wedding photo and tucked both inside an envelope. I placed the envelope on the coffee table where she couldn't miss it. The note said, "Emily, I know. I've always known. This was my house. Tonight, you're going to learn what that really means. Mom." I locked up with the new keys, drove home, and waited. David called that evening like he always did after his shift. His voice was tired, but warm. "Hey, Mom, Emily said she's driving up to the cabin tomorrow to check on the roof after that storm. Said you mentioned it was leaking?" "That's right, honey." I told her I'd handle it, but she insisted. You know how she is. He chuckled softly. "Yeah, she's thoughtful like that. Listen, I'm on call all weekend, but if you need anything—" "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said. "You just focus on saving lives. I've got everything under control here." I hung up the phone and stared at the phone for a long minute. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, because for the first time in weeks, I actually did have everything under control. Friday morning, I woke up before the sun. I dressed simply, jeans, a soft gray sweater, the silver necklace David gave me for Mother's Day. Nothing that would scare her. I wanted her comfortable, relaxed, off guard. I drove the 2 hours with the windows down, letting the cool morning air clear my head. When I pulled up to the cabin, I parked in the usual spot so my car would look normal from the road. I let myself in with the new key, made a fresh pot of coffee, set 2 mugs on the counter like I was expecting company. Then I sat in the big armchair in the corner, the one hidden just enough by the bookshelf, and I waited. At 10:17 a.m., her white SUV came up the gravel drive. I watched through the window as she parked, stepped out, and walked to the front door with that same confident sway she always had. She tried her key, once, twice, frowned, tried again, then she knocked. "Mom, you here already?" I didn't answer. I just hit record on my phone and let the new cameras do their job. She knocked again, louder. "Hello? The key's not working. Did you change the locks or something?" I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and opened it just wide enough for her to see my face. No smile, no warmth, just calm, the kind of calm that comes after you've cried every tear you had left. "Emily," I said quietly, "come in." She stepped inside, confused but still smiling that practiced smile. "Hey, I thought I was meeting you here to help with the roof." David said. "I know what David said," I cut in. My voice didn't shake. "I also know what you've been doing here every other weekend for the last 6 months." Her face changed in an instant. The smile froze, then cracked. Color drained from her cheeks. What are you talking about?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply picked up the remote and pressed play. The TV on the wall lit up with the security footage. Her and Ethan, right there on the couch. The sound was low but clear. Her laugh, his voice murmuring her name, the soft gasps that made my stomach turn even now. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. She stumbled backward until her legs hit the couch, the same couch, and she sank down like her knees had given out. "Mom, it's not—" "Don't," I said. One word, sharp, final. I walked over and placed the envelope in her lap. She opened it with trembling fingers. When she saw the note and the deed, a single tear slipped down her cheek. You can't do this," she whispered. I leaned down so we were eye level. "This is my property, my house, my son's heart you've been playing with. I can do whatever I want. And right now, what I want is for you to tell David the truth. Today, in person. Or I will." She looked up at me, eyes wide with panic. "Please, he'll never forgive me. We can fix this. I'll end it, I swear." I straightened up and looked at her for a long moment. The woman who had called me mom. The woman who had promised to love my son forever. "No, Emily," I said softly. "We're past fixing. The only thing left is the truth." I picked up my phone, opened the group chat with David, and started typing. "Sweetheart, something important came up at the cabin. Can you get here as soon as your shift allows? It's about Emily. She has something she needs to tell you." I hit send. Then I turned back to her. "And while we wait," I said, "you're going to sit right there and explain to me, mother to mother, why you thought destroying 2 families was worth a few weekends in my cabin." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. She had no answer, but I had the truth. And for the first time since that stormy night, I finally felt the scales beginning to balance. The minutes stretched like hours. Emily sat on the edge of that same couch, her hands twisting the wedding photo I'd left in the envelope. Tears streamed down her face now, but they weren't the kind that come from real regret. I could see it in her eyes, the calculation, the panic, the desperate search for an exit. She kept glancing at the door like she could will David to stay away. "Mom, Linda, please," she whispered, voice cracking on purpose. "You don't understand. It was a mistake. Ethan, he made me feel seen when David was always at the hospital. I was lonely. I never meant to hurt anyone." I stayed standing, arms crossed, watching her the way you watch a storm that's already passed. "Lonely," I repeated softly. $11,000 out of the joint account, 4 months of weekends in my cabin, text messages that would make any wife sick to her stomach. That's not lonely, Emily. That's a choice, over and over again. She started to sob louder, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. "You raised him to forgive. You always said family comes first. If you tell him, it'll destroy him. Please, for David's sake." I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. For David's sake, that's rich coming from the woman who brought another man into the home where my son's grandson would have played someday. I pointed to the TV, still paused on the clearest frame, her head thrown back, his hands on her waist. "That's the face you make when you're destroying my son's future. Don't you dare use his name to save yourself now." She opened her mouth again, but the sound of tires on gravel cut her off. My phone buzzed. David's text. "Pulling up now. What's going on?" My heart squeezed tight. This was the moment I'd both dreaded and waited for. The front door opened. David stepped in, still wearing his scrubs, stethoscope around his neck, eyes scanning the room. He saw me first, then Emily on the couch, mascara running, clutching that photo like a shield. "Mom? Emily?" His voice was already tight with worry. "Is someone hurt? The roof? What?" I walked over and touched his arm gently. "No one's hurt, sweetheart. But Emily has something she needs to tell you, something she's been keeping from both of us." He looked at her, really looked, and I saw the exact second his world started to tilt. The confusion, the flicker of fear. "Em? Baby, what's wrong?" Emily broke then, not because of guilt, because she knew the game was over. She stood up on shaky legs, words tumbling out between sobs. "David, there's someone else. It started a few months ago. I met him at a conference, and things just happened. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this." The room went so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. David's face drained of color. His mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. Then one word, raw and broken. "Who?" "His name is Ethan. He's married too. It was stupid. I was lonely. You're always working, and I—" "Stop." David's voice cracked like ice under pressure. He turned to me. "Mom, how long have you known?" I didn't flinch. "Since the storm. I came up to check the leak. I saw them. Right here." I picked up the remote and pressed play again. The footage rolled, clear, undeniable, merciless. David watched for 10 seconds before he turned away, hand over his mouth like he might be sick. Emily reached for him. "David, please, we can go to counseling. I'll end it today. I love you. I do." He stepped back like her touch burned. "Love me? You brought him to my mother's cabin. You took money we were saving for a house. You looked me in the eye every single night and lied." His voice rose, not in rage, but in pure disbelief. "Mom, is this real? All of it?" I nodded once. "Every second. And there's more. The private investigator confirmed everything. Dates, places, how much she took. I didn't want to believe it either, baby, but I couldn't let her keep hurting you." David sank into the armchair, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. The strongest man I knew looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. I knelt beside him, one hand on his shoulder, the same way I did when he was 8 and scraped his knee. "I'm right here. I've got you, just like always." Emily stood there, crying harder now, but the tears had changed. These were real, the kind that come when you realize the life you took for granted is gone. "David, say something, please." He lifted his head. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady for the first time since he walked in. "I want you to leave. Right now. Take your car. Don't come back to the apartment tonight. I'll pack your things and leave them with Mom. We're done." "But the cabin," she started. "This cabin was never yours," I said quietly, cutting her off. "The locks are changed. The security system only answers to me now. You don't get to use this place or my son anymore." She looked at me like I'd slapped her, then at David. He didn't move, didn't soften, just stared at the floor where her shadow fell across the rug we'd picked out together years ago. Emily grabbed her purse with trembling hands. At the door, she paused, looking back one last time. "I never meant it to end like this." David didn't answer. I did. "Neither did we," I said. "But choices have consequences, and today yours caught up to you." The door closed behind her. Her SUV started, tires spinning on the gravel as she drove away faster than she should have. The sound faded into the trees, and then there was only silence. David sat there, staring at nothing. I sat beside him on the arm of the chair and pulled his head gently against my shoulder the way I did when he was little and the world felt too big. His shoulders shook once, only once, before he got control again. "Mom," he whispered, voice thick, "how do I even start over?" I kissed the top of his head. "One breath at a time, sweetheart, and you're not doing it alone, never alone." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time all week. Light poured across the living room, touching the couch where everything had started. It felt like a sign, like the storm was finally over. But I knew the real cleanup was just beginning. David didn't speak much on the drive home that afternoon. He sat in the passenger seat of my old sedan, staring out at the trees blurring past, the same trees that had framed so many family drives over the years. I kept the radio off. Sometimes silence is kinder than words. When we pulled into the driveway of the house he grew up in, the house that still smelled faintly of the cinnamon rolls I used to make every Sunday, he finally spoke. I keep thinking, was any of it real? The way she looked at me on our wedding day, the nights we stayed up talking about kids and houses and growing old together, was I just blind? I turned off the engine and faced him. You weren't blind, David. You were trusting. You loved her with everything you had the way your father loved me. That's not a flaw. It's who you are. She's the one who chose to break that trust. He nodded slowly, but the hurt still sat heavy in his eyes. I don't even know where to start. The apartment, her things, our accounts. It feels like everything's tangled. Then we untangle it, I said simply, one knot at a time, starting tonight. That first night, we didn't do anything dramatic. We ordered pizza, extra cheese the way he liked it as a teenager, and sat on the living room floor like we used to when he was home from college. I let him talk when he wanted to, cry when he needed to, rage when the anger finally broke through. Mostly, though, he just sat quietly while I held his hand, the way I did when nightmares used to wake him at 3 in the morning. The next morning, I made coffee the old-fashioned way, on the stove, in the dented pot my husband always used. David came downstairs in yesterday's clothes, hair messy, but his shoulders weren't quite as slumped. I called a lawyer, he said quietly. Friend from med school recommended someone who handles divorces. No fault, clean, fast. I nodded. Good. You don't owe her a long, drawn-out fight. You owe yourself peace. Over the next few weeks, the pieces started falling into place. David moved back into his old bedroom upstairs, the one with the faded rocket ship wallpaper he never let me paint over. He laughed the first time he saw it again, actually laughed, and that sound was worth more to me than any victory speech. Emily's things were boxed and left on the front porch of their apartment. She picked them up without a word. No scene, no pleading, just quiet defeat. David changed the locks the same day, changed the passwords, froze the joint accounts long enough to separate what was his from what she'd already taken. The lawyer handled the rest, division of assets, no alimony requested, no custody battles because, thank God, there were no children caught in the middle. The cabin stayed locked. I didn't go back for weeks. When I finally did, it was on a bright Saturday morning with David beside me. We walked through every room together, opened windows, let fresh air chase out the stale scent of betrayal. We threw out the couch, donated it to a shelter 2 towns over, replaced it with something simple, sturdy, ours. We scrubbed the floors until they shone again, hung new curtains my sister sent from the coast, turned the place back into what it had always been meant to be, a safe harbor, not a secret hideaway. One afternoon, David found the envelope still on the coffee table, the one with my note and the deed. He read it silently, then looked at me with something like awe. "You really did all of this for me?" he said. "No," I corrected gently. "I did it for us, for the family we still are, and for the man you're going to keep being, even after this." He hugged me so tight I could feel his heartbeat slow down against mine. "I don't know how to thank you, Mom." "I love you," I whispered. "You already are, by getting up every day, by showing up to work and saving lives even when yours feels broken. That's thanks enough." Months passed. Seasons changed. David started smiling again. Small at first, then wider. He took up running in the mornings, started cooking again, even went on a few dates eventually. Nothing serious, just coffee, just testing the waters. He told me once, late at night when the house was quiet, "I thought losing her would break me forever, but it didn't. It hurt like hell, but I'm still here. Stronger, maybe, because of you. I never told him how close I came to breaking too. How many nights I sat alone in the kitchen replaying that footage until my eyes burned. How the anger kept me warm when nothing else could. I didn't need to. He already knew the deepest part, that a mother will walk through fire for her child and come out the other side still holding his hand. Emily disappeared from our lives. Word got around quietly. Small towns talk, even when you try to keep things private. Last I heard, she'd moved to the city, taken a job somewhere new. I didn't wish her harm. I didn't wish her happiness either. I just wished her gone from the parts of our world that still mattered. And in the quiet spaces she left behind, something beautiful started growing again. Trust, laughter, hope. The kind that doesn't pretend the scars aren't there, but refuses to let them define the story. If you've made it this far, thank you, truly. Stories like this aren't easy to tell or to hear, but they remind us that betrayal doesn't get the final word. Silence doesn't either. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is speak the truth, protect what's yours, and keep loving the people who deserve it, even when your heart is in pieces. So, if this story hit close to home, if you've ever had to stand up for someone you love or for yourself, drop a like. Hit subscribe if you want more real stories about ordinary people finding their way back to justice and peace. And in the comments, tell me, what's one moment in your life when you chose truth over comfort, when you refused to stay silent? I read every single one because your stories matter too. We're in this together. And the best revenge? Living well, healing strong, loving deeper. Because the people who hurt us don't get to write the ending. We do.